This message is called The Object of Temptation. I think that's the word. The object of temptation. Just like the stumbling block that Balak was trying to lure Balaam to cast before the people of Israel. And he tried to pretend like he didn't know what was going on. But he did. He tried to pay lip service, as we are often tempted to do, and use words that sound like utter devotion to God, when we know we're lying about part of the picture anyway. With their hearts, they deny me. With their mouths, they praise me. With their lives, they deny me. This is the trademark of God's people throughout the Bible, Old and New Testament. There are some things that is going to take us down. Temptation can take us down very easily. And it's not a good thing. That just means that we are clearly needing to be much more strict and sober about the way we handle things in life. Number one thing to take us down is various attractions to the opposite sex. Various attractions to the opposite sex. Whether innocent looking or to the extreme. Emotional affairs or literal affairs. The opposite sex attracts, and it causes a lot of trouble. Well, Satan knows that. He tried to take down the people of Israel. It's one of the many things he tries to do, to demoralize. If you get them to fall into immorality, then they're not going to have God's protection. Then they're easier to make your slaves, and slavery is what Satan's all about. So he tries to lure you away with things that is evil, because he knows that people, they can only handle so much temptation before they finally give in. It starts to chip away and chip away and chip away and try to wear you down, break you down. And Satan wants to wear out the saints, make them give up. Finally, okay, Satan, I'll just go ahead and do it. Okay, devil, I guess that's not that big of a deal, is it? It's not too big of a deal. And then we rationalize with our ration of lies, and all of a sudden start carrying on. But Satan knows what happens. He plants a seed of faith and disobedience. Instead of faith and obedience, it's a seed of faith and disobedience. Faith cometh by hearing, and it goeth by hearing. Faith cometh by seeing, and goeth by seeing, in some senses. There's a lot of things that can bring you into the track and bring you out of the track. Light brings you towards the light, and darkness brings you towards the darkness. But think about it this way. To cast a stumbling block like this, like Satan knows. And so people who are evil, they're upset about me. I was raised in a messed up place. My parents were drunkards. They were doing this. And my mom was with these kind of guys. And my dad did this behind her back and blah, blah, blah. Fought all the time. Terrible things happening in the home. They did terrible things to me too. Then I see these other people over here. They've been born in righteousness. They have a series of righteousness. They have a success rate in their family. They're doing a lot better than a lot of people are, and they make me angry because why couldn't I have been born in a pure family like that? Or whatever reason they did it, but they put pornography into the places where they knew the Mennonites and the Amish people were going to be firing or hunting. I learned it straight from a Mennonite, so I'm telling the truth. I try to tell first-hand stories as much as I possibly can to make sure I'm accurate about what I teach. And the story goes like this, that try to capsize these Christians by planting a seed. They already had it all set up. We go into the woods, we catch things, we separate everything. But the world doesn't want them to be separate. They want to take them down. You know, when there's a lot of light going on out there, it makes you mad, it makes you offended. Like, no, I'm a good person, I know it. Not as long as those Christians are out there living righteously. Now they're shining light on my darkness, and I hate it, so I'm going to take them down. And now that they're coming down, now I feel better about myself. It's amazing how there's a part of people, hypocrite Christians, that like to see good Christians fall. They take some kind of a satisfaction out of it. Pretty sad, pretty scary. But they try to do that. They try to kind of cast a stumbling block. Okay, so you got two things here. Maybe more, but let's look at two aspects here. First of all, you have to have a woman who's dumb enough to do what they do to even get in those places. To be in these kind of material. And then you have to have someone who's going to plant the seed right where you're crossing, hoping to catch your attention. The object of temptation. Normally, if it's pretty bad, someone's going to have to go out of their way to do it. They got to go out of their way to try to plant a seed. But the Bible also mentions women. Silly women laden with lust, creeping into men's houses and tempting them. So instead of letting the enemy of the church do it, we've got Christian women doing it all of that by themselves. They themselves are the stumbling block. They cast themselves as the stumbling block to tear down men. Silly women laden with lust, creeping in men's houses. You don't have to wait for God. You don't have to wait for the pagans to put garbage in your face to try to take down the Christians. We got Christians doing it to the men right inside the church. It's an inside job among people who probably are serious about serving the Lord. It's like I talked about it before, like the paid Satanists to go into churches and pretend to be like Christians and to take down the church by making all kinds of trouble, little by little, seducing. Like the Jesuit cry to be a Calvinist to the Calvinist. Be an evangelical to the evangelical. Get into the pulpit and water down the gospel. Earn their trust like the Antichrist, the King of the North. Coming in there and winning the hearts over them, not by doing things normal, but by flatteries. Get in there and change things around. Seduce the preacher. Set him up in a place that he can't handle. Even when he didn't do nothing, they'll still set you up. Did it to a Foursquare preacher. Set up a camera on the side of the road, and a woman who was dressed in a big coat, and the pastor pulls over kind of late at night. She crawls into the thing with her legs all showing, and someone took a picture of this. He was done preaching. He was trying to be nice. Didn't even think about it. Casting a stumbling block is one thing. When the enemy is trying to purposely do it. But when we have people in there doing it to each other, I want to know when it's going to stop. When are women going to cover their bodies? When are people going to be decent again? Women have this problem too, but the percentage is a lot less with women than it is for men. God wired women to have a lot to lose when they fail in relationships. So God wires them to be extra careful. Men, it's easier for them to jump in and out of situations for their own selfishness, and it doesn't hurt them that much. The system tries to make it hurt them by saying, that's awesome, now you get to pay child support for the rest of your life. At least that. But still, in a sense, men don't necessarily have to take all the responsibility. There's ways out sometimes. So women do have a responsibility, so it's crazier for them to fail in this department than it is for men. It's still a sin in God's eyes, but there's still a sense of casting a stumbling block, bringing the Moabite women around the people of Israel, knowing that they are fair, and that Israel can only handle so much temptation because they're pretty weak anyway. They always fall, and they fell. They fell so bad that even when the judgment was coming, God wanted to wipe out everybody. And everybody knew that they were busted for living filthy again. They're all crying. And a man takes a woman to the tent to continue his Moabite sensual ways. And then Phinehas takes a spear and sticks it right through the tent, right through his back and right into her stomach, and they're all dead. The tent dies, the man dies, and the woman dies. And God says, now you're talking. Now you hate sin just as much as I do, boy. And just because you showed that, I'm only going to kill 25,000 of them now. Because I hate sin. But Balaam cast a stumbling block before his own people because he loved the wages of unrighteousness. But woe to the woman who will be that. They get nothing for it. But they want to play that because they want the acceptance. They need to be accepted. That's a thing that we all have. We all are motivated by being accepted, by being appreciated. It goes a long ways. It's very motivating. People are motivated by connections with other people. But women have got to understand. You're going to be held accountable for all the men that you take off track because they're made to be awakened to connecting with the opposite sex very easily. When I was young, a preacher said something very interesting. He said, women, you don't understand this, but men do. If a man is attracted to you, all you have to do is hold his hand, and within seconds he'll be ready for the act. That's how sensitive men, God made men to be that sensitive to the opposite sex. Satan knows it. That's why he causes everybody to dress crazy, because it inspires a wicked and adulterous generation, utterly destroying the substructure of what God's design is for the nations. But what happens when you yourself are that object of temptation and placing yourself where you don't belong because you don't think the rules apply to you? You might be deceived enough to think that that's a reality, but one day you're going to find out that that's not true, and that you're crossing a line that is so serious that you're going to be held responsible by God for mishandling the parameters of the pre-marriage, marriage, and after the marriage has taken place. Anybody who interferes with pre-marriage, the courtship, the wedding, and the life of marriage, anybody who wants to interfere with the rules in this thing, I believe is a criminal before the Lord. We have all seen a tremendous amount of this failure in the churches. And it's something that has got to stop. It's bad enough when the enemy tries to do it to you for their own gain. But it's even worse when our own are doing it to ourselves.